Okay, sweet. This one is super fun. So Arrowhead is what the common name is. Obviously, the leaves look like an arrow, but Sagittaria is the Latin name. Um, Sagittaria latiflora. Sagittaria latifolia is the most common species, probably by far. There's lots of variations in between these. Some are fatter, some are longer. The leaves are fatter, longer, shorter, whatever. There's all different species that we can describe with the Latin names, but Sagittaria is the family of arrowheads, of which there's quite a bit, but it's super, super cool. This is one of my favorite ideas when it comes to the names of plants. This is actually a name that you say probably almost every day. So what we call it is Waapziipin. Waapziipin is describing the roots of arrowhead. The roots are they're just like little white potatoes. So they're really, really starchy, and they're used as a food source anywhere and everywhere. I know lots of people who have utilized these, there's quite a bit of food out there that we can use. But yeah, these Waapziipin and lots of the arrowheads have all kinds of edible tubers that you can just straight up eat. They're interesting. They're not exactly like a potato, but I want you to hear the way that we describe it, Waapziipin, because another name that you're going to hear probably more often, Waapziipin is the way my grandma remembers it. That's the way my community says it more often than not. But almost nearly everywhere else that I went, it's Waapadonh. And so Waapshkizhiiaa, that's describing something that's white. So it's just these white roots. So Waapado, I wanted to draw our attention to Pado, the last part, because that's the way that we would describe potatoes. That's the word that we use. So a lot of people will say pin or pinique for plural for potatoes, but a lot of people say Pado for potatoes. Actually, very few communities say Pado to describe potatoes, but that's the way that it used to be when people first started coming over down the St. Lawrence. There was potato farms like you couldn't even imagine, and that's what the Algonquin people that were growing those potatoes, that's what they called it, Pado. What is this food? Pado. And so they said, oh, patat. And then that's the French name for potatoes, and then to say the English is potato. So Pado, patat, potato. That's the sort of way that we describe this. So yeah, when you're looking at lots of different plants, when we're describing the roots of large fleshy tubers, more often than not, they are called either pin or Pado. And so you'll hear that as we go along in every single one of these videos. But yeah, Waapadonh is the way that we describe arrowhead. And so that's probably what most people call this plant. But there's another name out there that is very reproducible in almost all the communities that we go to. There's always somebody who says, my dad used to say this. And it's when we're describing these leaves of arrowhead, a lot of people will say Ajijaakaadenhs. So Ajijaak is a crane, Sandhill Crane. And Kaadehns, or cod, is your leg. And when you add that diminutive suffix kaadehns, that's a small leg. And so Ajijaakaadenhs is the crane's small legs. And so when you're looking at the plant, you could sort of see that kind of just like a crane standing there with those long, thin legs. This plant, it can grow in all kinds of aquatic areas, but it was tended to in more ephemeral areas. So when the water recedes in the fall, that's those are the places that we would tend to this plant. So to putting the seeds in and establishing the plant in an ephemeral pool, ephemeral lake, ephemeral pond, so that when the water drains in the fall, then you don't have to go digging in the water to grab your waapinique or waapziipin or your Waapadonh it's all the water has already receded, and so you're just pulling them out of the mud, and it makes harvesting way easier. So when we tend to this plant in those areas and the water starts to recede, it reveals these legs, and you could see the leaves like the body of a crane, Ajijaak, and then you see the legs, Ajijaakaadenhs, because it always looks like a crane. It always has small legs, except for the kids. So yeah, Ajijaakaadenhs is the way that we call the arrowhead, because of the way the stems look like the legs and the body of the crane looks like the leaves. So here's a little Ajijaakaadenhs, and with great big looking legs. I don't know how often you guys get to see little cranes, but it's something else. So yeah, there's Sagittaria, Waapziipin, Waapziipadon, Ajijaakaadenhs, and the little white potatoes. Oh yeah, and a really beautiful flower too. I can't it's really nice to go and see this flower, and to see it bloom. Everywhere that it grows is generally really stinky, so it's really nice to see a flower when you're amongst all of that stink. But yeah, Ajijaakaadenhs, Waapziipin, Waapziipadon, Sagittaria. SPP. Ja, na, čumigać.